you a little bit of a kind of introduction to how we plan to run the two challenges at the machine learning for structural biology workshop that is happening this year at NeurIPS. So basically, let's go to the right slide. The plan for these challenges is that we want to kind of emphasize open models and allow the community to get a good idea what the current state of the art is for both of these data sets. So once you have your model trained using either Pinder or Plinder, and you want to participate in the challenges, then we will explain you now how you can do this so that you can participate in the challenges and be featured on the leaderboard. And then actually, so you don't have to have submitted the paper to the MLSP workshop, but if you decide to participate in the challenge, then the winner for each of the two different tracks of the challenge, so Pinder and Plinder, we will invite them to give a talk at the workshop in Vancouver. Okay, so for hosting this challenge and kind of the technical infrastructure, we'll be using Hugging Face. For those that don't know Hugging Face, I'm going to just briefly explain what this platform allows you to do. So basically, on Hugging Face, you can host models, so you can upload model weights, and then other people can download them. You can also host data sets, and also Hugging Face has this part of the platform is called Spaces, where you can host kind of basically a web app that is connected to a backend where your model will run, and then you can you have this UI that you can use to interact with the predictions. And basically, this Spaces platform is what you're going to use for the challenge. And on Spaces, you have the option to use different UI frameworks. So basically, Python libraries that allow you to create a web interface. There's Streamlit and there's also Gradio. And for this challenge, we will be using Gradio. So here's just a simple example of how such a Gradio app can look like. So this is for some kind of GAN network where you can generate images. So basically, it gives you a web interface where you can easily interact with the model, maybe upload some files, provide some inputs, and then you can click a button to run inference for the model and get the output. And we are using Gradio because it's really easy to install and set up. So you just pip install it, and then it's available, and then you can basically use it pretty much everywhere. So when you've trained your model on the Pinder data set, and then when you're setting up the inference pipeline, then you can develop using Gradio locally, and then you can just share your locally developed app on Hugging Face Spaces. And you can also use it in notebooks. You can use it on Google Colab. So it's a really versatile platform that allows you to develop where you want. And then we in the end, will use Hugging Face Spaces to kind of host the interface together with an environment that is describing the other dependencies that your model has in order to run. So basically, in the end, for each of the participating groups, we'll have a self-contained interface that we can use to run the benchmark for the challenge, but also other people can use the model to try it on their own or try their own inputs. So overall, we expect that this really will be a useful addition for the community to kind of have a set of models that is all trained on the same data set, and we can kind of really compare them and interrogate them as we want. And the nice thing about Gradio is, as I said, that you can develop locally or somewhere in the cloud. And actually, so when you start a Gradio app, you will have this localhost URL that starts with 127 that you can use to, in the browser, open your Gradio app that is running locally on your machine. But actually, they also offer you this SSH tunnel, so you can basically run your app on some GPU workstation or on some cluster that doesn't necessarily have a browser connected to it. And then when you launch the Gradio application, you will get this URL that is basically tunneling into this stronger workstation. So even if you have an iPad or a pretty like low-powered laptop, you can still run these web apps and check them. So that is really quite convenient. And obviously, if we run on Hugging Face, it's the resources that will be used by your application. They are not on your local machine, but they will be resources that are provided in the cloud by Hugging Face. By default, you have 2 CPU cores and 16 gigabytes of RAM. There's also some of these paid upgrades. And then there's also the possibility to apply for these community GPU grants. And actually, for the challenge, Hugging Face will sponsor GPUs. So if you participate in the challenge and you signed up, then at least for some time, your model will be available for free to anyone, thanks to this GPU donation from Hugging Face. And then we can use it to run the predictions on the Pinder or Plinder test set. But also other people can use it to run predictions, and even you yourself can use it. And the GPUs, most likely, depending on the model, will either be a T4 or A10G. So it should be pretty sufficient for most use cases. Hugging Face also has this additional feature that I want to highlight. We won't use it for a challenge, but that might be something that is also useful to people. So basically, they offer you free A100s in the cloud. You just have to become a member of this group, and then you can basically have your Gradio app run for free on A100s. So that's pretty nice too. And the cool thing about using Gradio is that kind of it allows us quite a few nice options. So people not only can run in the web interface, but actually each of the Gradio applications also has a REST API that is available. So you can kind of programmatically run predictions on this remote machine in the cloud, and then process the predictions locally. So that's really easy. And just below each Gradio app, you click on this Use via API button, and then it will tell you how to use the API. And that's quite useful. So, for example, if you've ever used Camera X has this ESM fold command where you can, in Camera X, you can fold proteins using ESM fold, and basically using this REST API for Gradio, you can pretty much implement that for any kind of model as you want, without really having to know a lot about how to set up a web service and so on, because Gradio handles all of this for you. So now let's go a bit into more detail of how actually we'll run the challenge. And basically for this, you just have to provide 2 files. So you have to, like, once you've trained your model, this is all, do it how you want. Then you need to kind of provide an inference script, and this inference script you have to plug into this predict function in this inference underscore app.py file in the template that you will get from us. And then in the same file, there's also this yellow block here that basically sets up the UI for the Gradio application. Just we provide for you. So in the end, it's really just a small wrapper around your inference code, and you just basically need to provide the predictions in the format that we want. So for the Pinder challenge, you just provide us the like PDB file or CIF file of the receptor and ligand protein, and for the Plinder challenge, you provide us the STF file of the ligand, and then once you return these results in the defined order, anything else that's totally up to you and shouldn't interfere too much with how you kind of set up your model. So that's kind of part 1 that's required to kind of launch the interface and allow us to run the predictions. But then obviously we also need to know what environment you ran your model in, and for this you have to set up this Docker file. So basically telling us which packages should be installed. Can be like Python packages or Conda packages or something else. So that's totally up to you. And then we provide you these 2 inference templates. So basically for Pinder, you see here on the left, there's an input for the FASTA sequence for both the 2 proteins, and then we also like one of the other input is a PDB file for the training of your model. You can decide if you want to use the APO PDBs or the Holo PDBs from the data sets. For the testing, we will then kind of randomly sample turn them to be as realistic as possible. And then once people click on run interface, run inference, then the prediction will be output. And the same thing for Blinder. So I can see these are the inputs that are basically required that your model should accept, and then kind of give back the SDF file of the prediction. To render the output, we'll use a component called Molecule 3D. So this is not part of the standard Gradio package, but it's basically also a wrapper around Py3D-Mol that allows you to easily kind of visualize PDB structures in the browser, so that we can kind of directly see what the result of the prediction is. And so, as I said, you need to provide the environment in such a Docker file. So this is the minimal example that we provide with the template. So if you've never used Docker, then there's a lot of great tutorials that you can find. And it's basically, if you ever use the bash terminal, it should be quite simple to understand what's happening. So you basically have to choose some kind of base image. In most cases, that can either be NVIDIA an image that already contains the CUDA drivers, or this continuum IO Miniconda image is also pretty good. And then you have to install the correct dependencies that match the environment that you used for training your model. And then anything below the expose on this number, this you leave unchanged, because that's basically that's required by Gradio to be able to connect to the application that's then running in the Docker container. And that's kind of a pretty minimal example. We also provided a, say, more real-world example where we are running like predictions for docking using Smina, and then you can see that we install more dependencies. We are downloading a Smina executable, but you can kind of basically any kind of workflow you can do inside this Docker container to set up the environment so that your model can be run reproducibly. And then in the end, also kind of people don't have to run on Hugging Face spaces, but they can also just download the Docker file and your code, and then, for example, deploy the model that you share on some other infrastructure as well. Then kind of how we will run inference is will be as follows. So basically what you will have to make available is this Hugging Face space that is kind of the runner for a single prediction. So basically the input is always the FASTA sequence, for example, or the MSA and the PDB files of either the Apo or Holo template, and then the Hugging Face space kind of will produce from a single set of inputs, a single set of outputs. So that means kind of this test runner is really independently reusable. Then for running the predictions, what we will do is we will simply pick examples from the Pinder or Blinder data sets, and then use the REST API of your Hugging Face space to send these examples there, and then store the predictions, and then we will compute all the necessary metrics that we will use for the ranking and for the leaderboard on the returned outputs. So that should be pretty easy and kind of allows each of you to with some effort, but we hope not a crazy amount of efforts, to really share reproducible demonstration of the inference pipeline. That's the method you're describing, for example, in your MLSB workshop paper. Yeah, that everybody can reproduce it. Some a bit more verbose instructions. I maybe won't read all of it, but basically what you have to do is, so you take this template that we give you, you duplicate it in your personal Hugging Face account. Then you can start modifying it either locally or also in the cloud directly. And then once you've set up everything, like the environment and your model pipeline, then you can transfer this space to this MLSB organization, and then fill the submission form to be added to the leaderboard. And then once we have all the spaces that are participating ready, we will grant GPUs for each of them, and then run the inference for you. And then after the challenge is over, the methods will still be available. So we continue to kind of have the community continues to have access to all of these methods, so that we can build on them or evaluate them for other tasks, for example. Just a few screenshots that might be helpful. So as I said, when you start the templates, you can duplicate the templates here, and then you can choose a name and owner of this space. In the beginning, you have to choose this CPU basic as the default resource, and then I would suggest that you develop this space locally, so that check that everything works locally, and then you push the local changes to Hugging Face spaces, still using this CPU basic hardware setting. And then once you've verified that the Docker image is building correctly, then you transfer the space to the MLSP organization, and then we can add the GPU to run. And to do this transfer of this space, you simply go to the MLSP organization on Hugging Face. So you simply search for MLSP in the search bar, and then you can click on this button here, request to join this organization, and then you will be able to, in the settings for the space, you will be able to change the owner and give it a name that we can recognize. And then once you have done this, you go to the leaderboard page, and then there's this submit tab, and then in the submit tab, you can enter the details of your model, and then we will run the predictions and then slowly populate this leaderboard, where you can then kind of filter for different architectures. You will see all the averaged metrics over the different test cases that we ran on the different models, and yeah. You can then also obviously click on other models and try individual examples on these models as well. And just to summarize the timeline, so this leaderboard, it will open on October 9th. So somewhere around October 9th, you should maybe start this process, and then we will accept predictions, accept models to be added via the submission form until November 9th. And then somewhere around this time, we will start adding GPUs to the models and run the predictions as well. And so this might seem a bit complicated now. I hope it's if you actually do it, it's not that complicated. If you still have questions, then you can obviously go to the Discord and ask us anything there. We'll try to reply as quickly as possible. And before we kind of go and wrap up with today's workshop, I thought I kind of demonstrate some things directly on Hugging Face, so that we maybe have you have maybe a bit better of an idea how this looks like. So let's maybe go to the start page of Hugging Face. So as you can see, it looks like this, and here you can search for MLSP, for example, and then you see already here that there's the organization machine learning structural biology. So if you click on this one, then you have all the information handy that you need. So here's where you can find the leaderboard. You can also find this kind of example space for running predictions using this Lixite model and Sminer. And then you also find the two templates for inference using the Plinder dataset and for the Pinder dataset. So maybe let's check out the Pinder dataset first. So as you can see, so here's the different inputs that people can provide to the model. And then when you click on run inference, then this will produce so it will produce the structural visualization of the output. It will also, there's a possibility to add some metrics. These metrics, they are mainly used for other people. They won't be used for ranking the structures directly. So for each of these, for each model run, you basically should provide a single output. So for example, if your model produces, let's say 100 candidates, poses for ligand, then you should, by some measure that you define and explain, you should select a single pose as the kind of the best ranked pose, and this pose will be used for comparing your model to other models. So the predictions always have a single output only. And we have these example inputs. So if I click on this one, then it'll basically populate these inputs with some sample input. And if I click on run inference now, then you will see it runs quite fast because it's already pre-computed. But it will basically have this output that shows you the two protein domains that we kind of predicted the structural arrangement of. There's also this metrics object where you can log any metrics that you deem kind of interesting or necessary, and then it will also tell you how the runtime looks like. And if we go to, so we can go here to files, then yeah, you basically see this is kind of these are all the files that are necessary to generate this. And of this, you basically only need this inference app.py to set up the application, and the Docker file to set up the environment that contains all the necessary packages. And if you go to inference app, then this is a pretty standard Python file. So on top, you have the imports. Then this is the predict function that you have to modify with kind of the pipeline that your model uses to process the inputs that are inputted using these web form elements into the output. And then in the end, you just return the path to the PDB file. And then the rest is kind of handled by the application. So basically this part that this part until the bottom here, this you don't need to modify. And if you want, there's the option to, so kind of by default, when one clicks on run, all the default options should already be chosen. But so that's also the setting that we'll use for running the inference. But if your model has certain parameters that you think might be cool for people to be able to play around with, then you can also add additional options. So for example, you can add sliders or checkboxes. For example, if you have an option to add random noise to some of the coordinates, or if there's different kind of, let's say, recycling parameters or number of sampling steps, or yeah, there's a lot of different choices. So if you have such options that you want people to be able to modify this in a little bit further, if they want to experiment, then you can add these additional options using these example inputs here, and then you would simply have to in this kind of event listener, when one clicks on the button, then here you have to add these additional inputs and then process them in the model. But as I said, by default, for the challenge, you don't need this. All the default parameters should be specified. And if you add these additional inputs, then make sure that the default parameter of the input is the one that you want to use for the automated inference that we will run on the respective data set that your model is participating in. Yeah, and exactly. And then this code is simply used to set up the representation of the output molecules, but I think that should be pretty self-explanatory. Then, so this is Pinder data set. For Pinder, this looks quite similar, right? So we just have a few different input fields. If I add the sample inputs and click on run inference, then you will also see that, okay, it's just some sample inputs, so the ligand is not actually docked, but it will also kind of visualize the position of the ligand and the position of the protein, so one can directly kind of see what's going on. Okay, and then before we go to questions, I maybe quickly will show also the leaderboard. So as you can see, this is also one of these Hugging Face spaces. It's we have two tabs for the Pinder and the Pinder leaderboard. So first one is for Pinder. So here only models participating in the Pinder challenge will be listed. Then right now there's only this example column, but in the end, you will be able to kind of sort models by all of these different metrics, and you can find the metrics that will use for the ranking in the documentation of the challenge. And yeah, it's possible to kind of hide columns or search for different models. So this will only make sense then if leaderboard is actually populated and the Blinder leaderboard looks the same, except that the metrics are different. And in order for your model to be added, you can simply follow the instructions here. So they're basically the same as the ones I've shown in the slide. But yeah, basically you just follow along here what we ask of you. And then in the end, you fill this form, you say which challenge you're participating in. And then if you submit it to the MLSP workshop, you simply add your submission ID here. Or if you didn't submit, but you still want to participate, then we ask that there's kind of some explanation of what your method is about. So either provide a link to a preprint or published paper if it's already published, so that yeah, we know what the method that you are submitting, what its technical specifications, for example, are. And then you can also specify a license and model architecture, and then you submit it, and then we will handle the rest. And we will get back to you via this contact email in case there's some questions or some problems. So yeah, that should hopefully be a smooth process. Okay, with this, I think I've shared enough information. Let's take some time to answer any questions you may have, and then we can already wrap up the workshop session.
Yeah, thank you so much, Simon, for that detailed.
Yes, so one big question I think that it's good to maybe also address out loud is, do we need to use the Blinder datasets and data loaders in our train.py code? If not, do we need to include our post-process data in the submission? So yeah.
So I'm technically, for the challenge, we will only use this inference app. So there, the train.py doesn't matter. But obviously, so the goal of both of these challenges is that we share reproducible methods. So if you take the Blinder or Blinder data sets and pre-process them in some way, then the good thing would be that in your train.py file, you have also an explanation of kind of how you processed the data set, and given that the size of the data sets are quite huge, right? So if the Blinder data set is like around 1 terabyte unzipped, it might be difficult to share it, but at the very least, you should share the instructions on how you process the data set so that it's clear kind of how other people could reproduce this.
And just to add, there's no like requirement to use the Blinder libraries, but the training systems have to be from the.
Yeah, and we have to kind of ascertain that there's kind of no data leakages or so on going on. So we should be able to see how you used the Blinder and Blinder data to actually train your model.
The other question was about the task. So the task for Blinder, would it be to predict the correct binding pose for a given ligand, not just the location of the binding pocket? And yes, so the entire task is to predict both the pocket and the pose. So basically you're given a sequence and a SMILES, and you would need to predict the complex. For methods that make use of starting structures, we provide also the starting structure.
Yeah, but you can't rely on the starting structure to be the holo structure, so it can also be the apo structure. So you have to account for some flexibility if you really want to perform well, because obviously sometimes the apo structure might not have the right pre-organization for ligand binding.
Yeah, but if, just as Lettuce is typing, like if you have a method that's just for predicting the pocket, you could think of just putting a ligand in there in any way, and you will still get at least the metrics of LDDT-LP, LDDT-PLI to know if you got the pocket right. Of course, then your method would not score very high for the task of the leaderboard, but you will have access to the metrics to see how you're doing on that task. Another question, could we update our submission? For example, update weights after more training?
That's a good question. So I think that we will have to decide that a little bit kind of as we go. I think it's probably the first case that someone is running a competition like this with kind of open inference and so on. So my statement now would be that it should be okay to kind of start the submission and also kind of share the Hugging Face space and so on with us already, so that we can kind of verify that everything is working. And only at the closure of the leaderboard, that's when kind of you can't change the weights anymore. So kind of the 9th November, if I remember correctly, that's kind of the cutoff date where you can't change anything anymore.
Yeah, and I'd also just like to add, because I think it's really cool, that essentially what this means is that your model would be available for anyone to run inference. And so, of course, this is great because it means you're making your model more available. So feel free after the leaderboard to, you know, keep updating, keep this open for the community. That would be great for everyone. Okay, so the question is again about post-processing, the reproducibility of post-processing. And so indeed, we require the train.py script for the reason of we should be able to reproduce, and we might want to try it for the winning submissions. This is still kind of like but so it's true that we're not actually planning to run every single.
Yeah, but if all the methods perform only okayish or bad, and then there's one clear outlier that performs extremely well, then obviously there's a question kind of, did they perform well because really the method is much superior, or because there's some leakage going on? So for this, we need to kind of know how you use the kind of base data sets that you got from Pinder and Plinder, how you process them to actually train your model. So that's kind of the aspect of reproducibility that we want.
Yeah, and I think all of us are basically like really interested to know what kinds of architectures and models are able to generalize. So this is kind of a bit of an honor system, but hopefully, I mean, all of you are wanting the same thing, right? So thanks.